Hello, welcome to our Q&A for Somatic Body Wisdom to address anxiety, overwhelm, and reactivated trauma. I'm Ann Patricia with the Shift Network, and it's my pleasure to be your host as we explore the teachings of Suzanne Scurlock and address questions about her course, which begins on Wednesday, July the 8th at 12 noon Pacific. If you're unable to join us live, no worries. You can still participate in this course. I'll explain more about that and much more later. But first, I want to introduce my guest. Suzanne Scurlock, a beloved faculty with the Shift Network, is the author of Reclaiming Your Body and Full Body Presence. Founder of Healing from the Core, she guides, speaks, and teaches about conscious awareness and its transformational impact on the healing process. Most recently, she's been pioneering online courses for distance healing based on her 2+ decades of practicing her 5-pillar formula for distance healing. I've had the privilege of working with Suzanne in the past, and I know her to be a grounded, wise, and most nurturing teacher. And I'm so looking forward to our conversation today. Welcome, Suzanne. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Anne. I really appreciate it. That's a wonderful introduction you just gave me. I would like to start today by just asking everyone to put their feet on the floor and to rest back so that as we go into our discussions and the Q&A that we're going to cover, that you are listening not just with your ears, but with your entire being, with all of the wisdom areas that I'm going to be teaching about in this upcoming class. So take a moment right now before we begin. Get your feet flat on the floor wherever you're sitting. Relax back so that your back is supported. You can let your eyes close momentarily and take some easy breaths. Breathing deep into your spine, into your lungs, into your backbone and your ribs, and letting yourself rest back. Good. Good. And as you rest back and breathe and drop more deeply inside, I would invite you to listen with all of your wisdom areas as we talk and share and ask questions, get them answered, discuss different issues. Because the wisdom that we have inside is probably one of the best kept secrets on the planet today. And my mission is to really help people learn how to be more self-referencing, how to live from their insides. So without further ado, if you start to feel like you're feeling a little anxious or overwhelmed, just stop for a moment and breathe and feel your backbone on the chair and your feet on the floor. And then bring your awareness back to our Q&A. And I think you'll really enjoy it a lot more from all of you than just if you're listening with the ears and with your left brain. Okay, over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Suzanne. So we'll spend the rest of our time together exploring your questions for Suzanne as we prepare for her video course, Somatic Body Wisdom to Address Anxiety, Overwhelm, and Reactivated Trauma. And that course begins on Wednesday, July the 8th at 12 noon Pacific. Please visit our website, bodywisdomareas.com. You'll learn all about our course, and there's a link to register there as well. So let's get started with questions. I want to thank all of you for taking time to send in so many wonderful, thoughtful questions ahead of time through our webcast. And for those of you joining us live, please type your question into the chat and I will read it out. So we're going to start with, I want to start with this one, Suzanne. Can you remind us of the body wisdom areas?
So I have to say that when I wrote Reclaiming Your Body and I outlined these 6 wisdom areas, I had to stop somewhere. So I did just pick out the 6 major wisdom areas. However, there are dozens and dozens of areas of the body that are like neighborhoods that hold wisdom. And in fact, every cell of who we are holds wisdom. But what I want to say is that the 6 that I find most useful and powerful for us to embody in are the feet and legs, the pelvis, the gut, the heart, your bones, and then the prefrontal cortex and the midbrain is the sixth area. So those are the six that I concentrated on when I was writing the book and really talked about in terms of their characteristics and how they work.
Thanks, Suzanne. So this came in from Laura. When I tune into the different areas of wisdom, I often don't get any insight. Sometimes I feel a contraction or discomfort regarding a question I ask, but I don't know whether it's true intuition or anxiety, fear related to previous trauma.
So that is a very, very excellent question, and it's a common question that I get, which is, how do I know the difference if I'm in a circumstance that's not right for me? How do I know the difference from that sense of something being off? Or the other possibility would be, what if that circumstance isn't really off, but I've had a very similar circumstance happen before, and I've got this old tape running in my head so that my gut clenches, and I feel uncomfortable in this circumstance, even though there's really nothing wrong. So what's the difference between the two, and how do we differentiate? One of the pivotal things that I say to people is a present moment gut sense, a gut instinct, has really very little charge to it. There's just a sense of, this is not right, move away. Whereas the stuff that eats us alive day in and day out, when we think about it, it's almost like having a hamster in a wheel in your head. And it causes your gut to clench. Often it'll cause your heart to contract. Oftentimes it'll cause your insides to clamp down. All of that is based on past experience. It may or may not have anything to do with what's going on currently in this moment. The gut, your gut's wisdom tells you what's happening right now. Is this moment right now what I need to be doing? And you'll know. Sometimes the most illogical things will just feel right. And you feel a flood of well-being, or, oh my God, I feel like I'm home. And then there'll be other circumstances where you're just like, oh, this is off. This is off. I don't even know why it's off. It's just off. And I need to get up and move away. There was actually a very interesting story, because when I wrote Reclaiming Your Body, I was at Esalen, and I was speaking with one of the other authors and teachers that was there, and I was telling her the story about gut instincts. And she said, oh my God, you have to tell this story. I was at a friend's house in Manhattan, and overlooking Central Park. We were sitting in this little bay window area, our two chairs. Mine was more in the bay window than her chair was. There was a nice little table in front of us, and we were having tea and really just enjoying ourselves delightfully. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I just started to have a sense of uneasiness. Just like, get out of here, leave. And she said, you know, of course, this is my friend. I can't leave in the middle of tea when we're talking about stuff. But the longer I sat, the more pressing this gut sense of, no, this is not right. Get up and leave, and get up and leave now. She kept trying to talk herself out of it, kind of the way I tried to talk myself out of it when I had that circumstance when I was 17 where I got strangled. But this, in her case, it got so strong in the end that she thought she was going to throw up. And it wasn't like that old charge of something she had done before. This was a present moment. You have got to get out now. So she got up. She said, I don't know what's wrong. I feel violently ill. And she left the woman's apartment, you know, got back to her place. The phone rings. She picks it up. And her friend says to her, she was shaken. She said her voice was shaky. She says, I cannot believe this. But moments after you left my apartment, someone trying to move a grand piano from an upper floor that was, you know, on all these jerry rigs that was coming down, they lost control of it, and it crashed through the bay window and crushed the chair that you were sitting in. Moments after she left the room. And so I said, thank you for giving me permission to tell this story. That's a pretty remarkable story. And she said, yes, it is. And I have never doubted my gut since that experience. That was it. That was, there was no logical reason for me to want to get up and leave. It didn't remind me of anything. I knew it wasn't an old trauma. It wasn't an old message about, gee, I don't like to sit and have tea, or I've never really liked this woman. No, she was having a lovely time. And her gut was just signaling until she got it. So that's a really powerful example of what we're talking about.
Thanks, Suzanne. So we've had a few questions related to this from Danielle, and it's very related to what you were just talking about. She says, I understand how important it is to listen to my gut. Having lived through some traumatic experiences, I know I'm on high alert, and I often sense dangerous situations where others might not. I feel like I'm predisposed to a sense of danger even when it's not there. They feel the same to me. So I wonder if you can speak specifically to that.
So Danielle, what I would say is that in your particular case, you have to do your work to release the hypervigilance from your nervous system. Yes, you are more likely to be on alert for danger, and you might even, in your mind's eye, in the files of your brain, you might even be saying, oh, I really have a well-tuned sense of danger. Well, you have a well-overtuned sense of danger if you've had trauma and didn't, actually, you cannot clearly see whether something is dangerous or not if there's a voice screaming in the back of your head. Anytime you're in a circumstance that looks even remotely like the circumstance you were in. I'll give you an example of this. When I was 17, and most of you that have read my books, Full Body Presence and Reclaiming Your Body, I tell the full story in there of where my journey began when I was 17. And I was strangled by a friend of mine out of the blue because he was crashing on amphetamines. I didn't know that at the time, but my gut did at some level. But what happened for me in the year after that occurred, despite the fact that I did try and get some psychotherapy and I had support to a certain degree in my life. I mean, certainly had a loving family and people believed me and all of that. However, one of the things that occurred was that when I would be in a car, because it happened in a dark car, whenever I would be in a darkened car with anyone, it could be my father, my brother, my best friend, my boyfriend, I would start to get this really crazy uneasiness. And I would think that there was something about me that was actually going to cause my father, my brother, my boyfriend, whoever it was, to turn around and do something bad to me. And it took me the longest time, took me about a year and a half to work through that and to allow myself to the ability to relax and be with people again, particularly in that similar circumstance, and not have that message come blaring through, even though it wasn't true, Yeah.
Thanks, Suzanne. This question from Elaine: how do physical ailments like gut and foot problems, like a fracture or arthritis, for instance, interrupt the ability to connect to your wisdom? And what can we do to gain clarity in those instances?
You know, one of the best things that I know when you have issues going on in your body that cause pain or discomfort or static of some kind is to get really good healing work that helps to get that static down to a level where you can relax so you can get quiet inside and listen. Now, by the way, even if you have those things going on, if there is some kind of wisdom trying to get through to you, let's say there's a deep yearning in your heart for something you're very inspired to do at a soul level, even though you may have heartache over something or deep loss, you will still be able to tune into that inspiration. So there are ways in which our body does break through whatever pain or distractions or static we have to enable us to hear the deep wisdom. It just sometimes takes a little longer. Also, one of the other things that people don't recognize is, let's say you're asking a question about something and you don't get an answer. And so you think, oh, something's wrong with my body. There's something wrong. I can't figure this out. No, in fact, oftentimes if you can't get an answer about which direction to take, it's because you're not supposed to make the decision yet. Because your body wisdom will let you know when the time is right what the answer is.
That's so helpful, Suzanne. Thanks for that. Maju is asking, will this course be experiential? And can you explain how so?
Woohoo. Okay, big question. Yes, everything I do is experiential, Maju. So what we'll do is we'll actually start the very first module. I'll give you the foundational work that I do in terms of teaching people how to drop into their inner landscape, how to work with who they are, how to be present and to notice what it is that is coming through in any given moment, and how to fill up your inner landscape so that all the lights are on, so you can hear and see and feel what's going on. And then every single module after that will contain an exploration having to do with the wisdom area we're dealing with in that particular module. So there'll be a whole exploration about the wisdom of the heart in challenging and distressing times. There'll be a whole exploration about the wisdom of the gut, the wisdom of the pelvis, the wisdom of the feet and legs, the wisdom of the bones, the wisdom of the prefrontal cortex and the rest of the brain. And in the very last module, we'll be doing an exercise that brings everything together, all together, so that you're working with your entire integrated system to get optimal answers for yourself.
So Sally is asking, is your work related to the chakra system at all, or more like meridians or TCM, or is it completely different than that?
So I have to tell you just a little bit of my history for this. Number one, I do know a lot about TCM, about traditional Chinese medicine, and I was married to a acupuncturist for 35 years. So I do understand that system. I also taught it in some of the cranial classes that I taught. So I understand Chinese medicine, and I certainly have gleaned wisdom from that system in how I put together these wisdom areas. I also studied chakras and metaphysics for 10 years. And so I also understand about chakras and how they work. I've worked with different kinds of energy healing in so many different systems. And what I will tell you is that these particular wisdom areas are different from all of those, and they are a synthesis from all of those to bring you into your own, your unique wisdom, so that whatever's going on in your heart is not going to be the inspiration in my heart or the inspiration in Anne's heart. And how can you learn that? How can you listen to it? That's a pivotal piece. So it is a synthesis of everything I have studied, and it is not necessarily like any of those systems. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and thank you for sharing that, Suzanne. I appreciate that. Meg is saying, I have had ever-present escalating fibromyalgia for 5 years, and I'm having a really tough time at the present. And I recognize how being in high alert most of my life has precipitated the fibromyalgia. I'm looking for ways to manage these flare-ups. Can this course help?
Yes, yes. I work a lot with people with fibromyalgia. I work with people with all different kinds of chronic illnesses. And one of the things, whether I'm working with them at a distance, whether I'm working with them with hands-on, whether I'm teaching them, the work that I do enables people to drop deeper inside so that in any given moment, you can hear what is the best avenue for me to take? What is the optimal route today to help me with my fibromyalgia? When you can drop inside, when you can get underneath the buzz, the ache, the sense of stagnation, the pain, then you can begin to hear and to feel, oh, okay, here's where I need to go in this moment. In much the same way, if you're listening internally, when you get an acute illness, I mean, be it COVID-19 or the flu or anything else, if you're listening to your body will say, okay, right now you need more fluids. Right now you need to go get in bed and sleep. Quit trying to push through this. Right now you need to stop eating, or right now you need to eat chicken soup, or whatever it is. The body will give you really clear indications, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think as long as you can stay conscious, you can get the information you need in order to help your system operate optimally, no matter what's going on. Yeah.
All right. This from Anna. I listen to my heart and have been pretty active in my life, but lately I'm feeling discouraged, realizing that there are things I want very much, yet I may not be able to achieve them. To continue my vision and pursuits or to focus on what's right here seems to be a common balance for me.
Okay. So I'm just curious about Anna's question here, because one of the things that happens for all of us is that we feel inspired, oftentimes as we're growing into adulthood, we start to feel inspired to do what we came here to do as souls, in terms of expressing our gifts, in terms of sharing, in terms of making a positive difference in the world, all of these things. And these could be things like mothering a child or mothering someone else's children who is having problems with mothering, or it can have to do with creating peace and care in places where there is a lot of turmoil and fear. It can have to do with writing. It can have to do with presenting. It can have to do with healing. It can have to do with so many different things. But those inspirations that our soul is whispering to us all the time, those inspirations change across the course of our life. And sometimes we may be holding on to an inspiration that's actually outdated. It's not something we're really supposed to be doing anymore. And one of the things that has been most fascinating to me as we're going into, the third or fourth month of incredible uncertainty and a lot of anxiety around the whole COVID-19 process, is to recognize that for many of us, our soul's inspiration has changed completely and something has cracked open. And the people who are still really moving and doing what they need to be doing, oftentimes they're not doing at all what they were doing in February or January. Something entirely different, but they're feeling very, very inspired by it. And it's really lovely to watch and see when someone knows how to listen to their heart, how they can stay current with it, and how that inspiration shifts and changes over time. I hope that answers your question, Anna.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. I think Margaret must be in the healing profession. She asks, how do you decide what somatic area to address for healing? Do you begin with emotional pain, physical pain?
Oh, that's a $10,000 question. Really, truthfully, I listen. When I'm working with someone, I'm always listening for what is most prominent, what's most primary. What area, what doorway, if I enter through this doorway, will help optimally in this person's system. Sometimes someone needs simply to be witnessed and to get something off their chest. So they need to be heard, perhaps held, and the emotions just pour out. At other points in time, someone cannot get to how they feel emotionally until you work with or open up a given area of the body somatically. So the fluid flow, tissue, this is where cranial work is so wonderful. I'm just trying to think of when I come to the table when I'm working with someone, or I'm on a Zoom call or a phone call with someone doing distance healing, I'm always asking, where's my optimal portal for this person? And then I help them tune in and I ask them to notice what it is as well. And then I work from there. Because we want to meet someone where they are and then step from there into the healing process. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Suzanne. Zaki shared that, I believe, during your intro event, I slept during the bones meditation. Is this normal?
Actually, when I first did my early explorations in 1996, I had been doing them for 6 or 8 years, but I actually went into the studio and recorded them. One of the things my students at the time said is, we hope it won't make you frustrated or angry, but I actually use your grounding and filling exercise when I can't get to sleep because it puts me right to sleep. So know that wherever you needed to go, that bones meditation probably got so quiet, you got so quiet with it, that your nervous system just turned off. And you got a really nice nap, it sounds like. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Exactly. Joan says, can you speak to the wisdom of the feet and legs? Could you say something about it? What language do they speak? Are common conditions such as rheumatism or arthritis part of their language?
You know, it's an interesting thing. And I'm going to be going into this a whole lot more in the module about the wisdom area of the legs and feet. But I will say that the legs and feet are what I call a stealth wisdom area. The reason I call them that is because people don't recognize it as a wise area of the body. In fact, they'll often attribute the answers that you get when you actually activate your feet and legs to other areas, like, oh yeah, my heart said, or my gut said. And so I think this is a very interesting piece to recognize, that the legs and feet have to do with getting moving, feeling your ground. They have to do with digesting or metabolizing, metaphorically speaking, lots of data. And I'll talk a lot more about that in the module on the wisdom area of the legs and feet.
Good. Okay. Let's go over to this one from Margaret. What about when the head and the rest of me don't agree? My heart and body are telling me I've lost feelings for my husband of 30 years. My brain is telling me he's kind and a good man, that I'd make a huge mistake to end the marriage. What to do?
Oh, this is another $10,000 question. I think that one of the pivotal pieces that I teach people is that any one area of the body cannot lead all the other areas around by the nose. If they do, you will not be making optimal decisions. So I cannot really say to you whether or not you should or shouldn't leave your husband. What I can say is you want to really work to get all the wisdom areas on board. And once you have them on board, have a roundtable discussion. Seriously, your heart may be inspired to move in another direction than your marriage has ever been going in. And you may need to sit down with your husband and speak about that. Your gut may be saying, this just isn't right anymore. And your pelvis may be saying something totally different. And when you sit with it in your bones, when your legs and feet are involved, and your prefrontal cortex comes in, then you can have an integrated conversation. And you can come to a decision that all of you can stand behind. All of you. Not just your head, not just your heart. The heart, by the way, can lead us astray if it's trying to take action all on its own. Any part of the body, if it's operating in a compartmentalized way, without the information from all the rest of you, it's problematic. We're meant to operate all together, all our cells communicating with all the rest of us.
So we are here with Suzanne Scurlock, learning about her course, Somatic Body Wisdom, to address anxiety, overwhelm, and reactivated trauma, which begins on Wednesday, July the 8th. Please join us by logging into bodywisdomareas.com. You'll see all the details on these modules and also have an option to register there as well. Suzanne, Kimberly was asking specifically if you could speak to the back of the heart. She was really fascinated about that.
Yeah, we will be going into all of the areas of the heart in that very first module of this 7-module workshop. And the deep heart, I will say, we'll be talking in a lot more detail about it, but the deep heart is I think of it as the well of the heart. I think of it as the part of the heart where our self-love, where our ability to really care for ourselves and stand up for ourselves springs from, so that we really can love and care and give our gifts in the world, have compassion in a way that doesn't cause us to burn out. Yeah, and we'll do a lot more on that in that first module.
Okay, that's great. Blair is sharing, I get numbness and tingling in my legs and feet. I'm very active and in shape. I've had the usual neurological tests. How would you guide me to start to unpack what's going on at a deeper level?
Well, I would teach you how to ground and fill, and we would start a whole conversation with your legs and feet. And I would hold that awareness with you of what you're feeling and sensing and hearing from your legs and feet. Oftentimes the legs and feet, or your bones or your gut or your pelvis, they'll say things to you, or they'll give you images, or you'll have a felt sense or a knowing that doesn't have any logical backup, but you know at some level that it's right. And sometimes people have such a strong left brain that they will second guess what the body wisdom is telling them. And if that's the case, then you need to know that you need to listen to what's going on, and you need to pay attention to how you receive information. And it could be quite an interesting conversation. Sometimes, if you get into your legs and feet will say, oh, for Pete's sake, go get some craniosacral therapy. You know, you've been going to somebody that's doing something that's not helpful for us. Or, I mean, there could be any number of different answers that I can't really say at this moment. All I know is that when I slow down with someone and we go into and listen to the wisdom of that area of the body, it's never let me down. Sometimes it'll actually send someone to another practitioner. You know, this work is really helpful, but what you really need is acupuncture. Or what we're doing right here is great, thank you for listening to me, but what you really need is, and it'll tell you, this is how you need to go next. I once had a gentleman who had neuropathy. He knew, in his particular case, he was probably in his early 70s at the time. He knew that he had a disc issue, but he was terrified of surgery, and he did not want to do it. And he eventually ended up on all these different medications that were making him crazy. And so we did a session where I basically held space in his spine with him, and I walked through the 3 different possible kinds of surgery that he could do. And what he noticed was when he got to one particular doctor that he had seen and the procedure that he had described, his back relaxed. And with the other 2, he tensed up and tightened up. And so, I said to him, it sounds like this third option here, that where your back relaxes, might be a good route for you to go. And you could tell that he was able to step out of his fear and his anxiety at that point and go do what he needed to do surgically. And it did get rid of the neuropathy, and it really, really helped him move forward in his life. He was able to go back to playing golf and walking again. So all of that's really important, and most of us don't know how to listen to the wisdom or the voice of our body, if you will. Yeah.
That is so fascinating, Suzanne. Thank you for sharing that. So this is from Kathleen. I am personally experiencing a personal and societal disruption right now, as I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer 8 weeks ago, and I'm employing every possible type of healing for my treatment. Will I be able to extract helpful tips? Is it safe for me to take this course? Or would there be something I should look at otherwise?
That's a big question as well. I think your listeners are not bringing me small questions today, and I welcome that. So I have had practitioners that I know. I have had friends who have worked with metastatic breast cancer and other kinds of cancers. And I can tell you that one of the things that's very, very true is that the more you can be present in your body, the more answers you get, and the more optimal the answers you get are. Meaning, there is maybe no straight road for you. I mean, there actually are some really interesting things happening out there in terms of metastatic cancers, particularly breast cancer, but you need to be able to listen to your insides and get a sense, gather all the data from your herbalist, from your oncologist, from your acupuncturist, from your naturopath, all of these things, and then sit with it within yourself and be able to be present enough to hear, here's my answer. Here's my next step. And you take that step and you listen. And if it feels like you're moving forward, you keep going. And you listen again. You get the answer, you take another step. Yeah. So, whether it's doing a a mushroom like turkey tail in high doses, which is one of the things they're now researching for metastatic cancers, or whether it has to do with combining different kinds of traditional chemo. It doesn't matter what route you take, but what does matter is that it's right for you. When it's right for you, you will know it, and you'll be able to take the steps. So I wouldn't, the question of safety, this course being safe for you, it's absolutely safe, and in fact, it could be life-saving. That's not a guarantee or a promise, but it could be.
Thanks, Suzanne. This question is from another Suzanne who's over on Facebook. If your chakras have been opened in your crown and your third eye, can this hinder your inner wisdom healing?
That's an odd question. How could having chakras be open and moving and doing what they need to do hinder anything? The whole point of working with chakras is to have them be balanced and open and flowing. There be a connection from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So I wouldn't find that an issue. The only thing I can think maybe you're asking, Suzanne, is if only my third eye and my crown chakra are open, so I keep finding it hard to stay in my body, yeah, that could be a hindrance for sure. So, and I do know people that had very early trauma that survived that trauma by dissociating. And oftentimes the third eye and the crown chakra are wide open on someone like that. But everything below that is having a really difficult time. That's a different matter. If that's the question you're asking, then I guess the answer would be yes. And the problem is not that they're open. The problem is that the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the belly, and the root chakra are not open, or they are impaired or dampened down in some way.
Great, Suzanne. So we have time for a few more questions, but before we take those, I want to share a few details about somatic body wisdom to address anxiety, overwhelm, and reactivated trauma. So as you can tell, this is going to be a really empowering 7 weeks with Suzanne, where you'll learn to access your inner guidance system. The 7-module course takes place on Wednesdays at 12 noon Pacific, starting July the 8th. Now you'll receive audio and video replays, transcripts, and any other materials through a course homepage. I call this our virtual classroom. Also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until July the 22nd to make sure you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect to a private Facebook community group to stay connected with one another. And Suzanne has a lovely group of assistants who have been doing this work and are teachers themselves and facilitators, practitioners, and they are over on that group supporting the course. So it's really lovely. Everyone who registers receives Somatic Body Wisdom Bonus Collection. And this includes The Shifting Paradigm of Healing in a Challenging World. That's a video with Suzanne and Cherry Owens as her guest. Full Body Presence, Learning to Listen to Your Body's Wisdom. That's Suzanne's audiobook. Listening to the 6 wisdom areas of the body, also an audio dialogue with Suzanne. And Soul Embodiment for Women. That is a video from Suzanne. And when you register, if you are sure you want to join us and you register by midnight Pacific, July the 2nd, you will receive this very special expiring bonus. It's an excerpt from Reclaiming Your Body, Healing from Trauma and Awakening Your Body's Wisdom. This is new and exclusive. It's a video that Suzanne created just for this course where she's reading a chapter of her book. And this also includes a PDF companion of chapter 1. As Suzanne explains in Reclaiming Your Body, not only do these challenging events take a toll on our psyches, they cut us off from the wisdom of our bodies as well. So that brings me over to this question, Suzanne. You have been teaching this work for a very, very long time. And why now for this work? And what is the opportunity for the people that step into this course with you at this time?
Wow, good question. One of the things that I know is that, if people say to me, what does your work give people, Suzanne? It gives them a sense of grounding, gives them a sense of healthy boundaries. It gives them a sense of inspiration, of being in contact with their inner knowing, their power, their clarity, their ability to take action and move and manifest things, and the ability to really think clearly and strategically. Now, those are things that I've heard over and over and over again from many of my different courses, but particularly the information about these 6 wisdom areas. And what I see right now is that the world is screaming for this information. Most of us are being bombarded by things all around us that are changing moment to moment. There's no clear helm leading things like the COVID-19 crisis. There's almost it's the way that we're being cracked open to the reality of what's happening right now for people of color, for people that have different gender preferences, for women. There's so many different things in the last couple of years that are going on in our culture where we are waking up and shifting and changing, and it's causing a lot of anxiety, in many, many cases, a sense of overwhelm, and if you've ever had trauma, a sense of reactivation of that trauma. So as things were heating up in early March, I had a voice in the back of my head say to me, you were made for these times. These skill sets that you teach, your gifts, are actually made so that people can make it through these times and not only survive, but actually thrive. And so that was a really pivotal piece for me. And that's when I actually got to and started talking with Deva about putting together this workshop for you all. And I'm very, very excited to take this information about the 6 wisdom areas and to dive deep with each one of them. Not just the general information about them, but how do they relate to what's going on right now in our world? How do they relate to the anxiety, to the heartbreak, to the overwhelm of what's happening right now in our culture? And we'll be working, because each one of them has a particular gift to offer you at this point in history. So that's what we'll be talking about, and that's why now. Why now? Yeah.
So this one is can you speak to why specifically the 2 parts of the brain you mentioned, prefrontal cortex and the midbrain? Why those 2?
Well, it's long been known research-wise that the prefrontal cortex it's our map maker, it's the strategizer, and then as you move back into the midbrain, the anterior cingulate, there are some areas that we know have to do with, they are relay stations, they are the parts of the brain that take all the wisdom from the rest of the body and teach us how to work with it and how to make a plan and how to move through our worlds in a way that makes sense. We know that when someone has a lot of trauma, for instance, severe trauma, that the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, and you won't find a whole lot going on in the prefrontal cortex at all that's of any use when someone's terrified and feeling re-traumatized in any given moment. So there's a lot that we know, and there is a lot that I think they're still learning about how the brain operates and how we can operate optimally in a circumstance like what we're dealing with right now.
This one's from Deb. Suzanne, I feel overwhelmed with the number of autoimmune conditions that I'm trying to heal. Could you speak about autoimmunity? Would the body really attack itself, or is that a misunderstanding?
Well, yes, the body does attack itself, and yes, it is a misunderstanding. It's miscommunication in most cases, where the immune system thinks some part of you is actually not you. I have autoimmune issues myself and have worked very well with them across the course of the last 25 years. But it took me learning how to dive in and listen deeply and figure out what I needed and didn't need in my diet, what I needed and didn't need in my exercise routine, what I needed and didn't need in terms of supplements and adaptogenic herbs and things like that. So I listened to my body. I heard what it needed. I paid attention, working with, for instance, cold lasers, extremely helpful because you up the number of mitochondria that are healthy and that are flourishing in your cells. So with an autoimmune condition, it's very, very helpful. So I've worked with all these different factors, all these different facets of what autoimmunity is and how to in a sense, become your own body's friend again and clear up the miscommunication that's going on inside your own system that would cause these kinds of attacks to take place, and then to cause problems in your own healing and process. So, yes, it is a miscommunication, and yes, it is real. And I teach an immune class in the craniosacral curriculum, and so I have looked at this very, very closely, and I've had my own journey with it over the last 25 years. So it is real, and it is workable. And the more you can listen inside and learn what you need to learn about your own system, the better you can respond to whatever's going on autoimmune-wise in your system.
Mm. So we've had a lot of people, Suzanne, ask about trauma and reactivating trauma. Tracy and several others have asked, I've identified lots of trauma, but how do we process without re-traumatizing?
You know, one of the pivotal pieces is that when trauma occurs, the body pulls in and tightens down and kind of encapsulates, or you exit stage right and have to come back at a later time. And when that occurs, the body is operating to the best of its ability, but it's hobbled at best. And so what I do when I teach people about these 6 wisdom areas is I'm teaching them how to embody more deeply in themselves in ways that can then hold these areas that are traumatized with compassion and love. You're bringing new resources from within yourself, and within and without the connections, to learning how to ground, learning how to breathe in a way that's calming to the nervous system, learning how to move in a way that's very healing for you. All of these are resources that enable you to have your energy reservoir be so full that you can begin to hold your trauma yourself, or with the help of a really good therapist, body worker or psychotherapist, in such a way that the trauma is, rather than being re-triggered, the trauma begins to literally reintegrate the area that where things are really tightened down and locked away, begin to open up and allow the body to reintegrate it, so that you know you had that trauma, but it's no longer hijacking the bus of your awareness, so to speak. And it enables you then to be present for the places that you've been traumatized. The first thing is to recognize that you have been traumatized. And then the second is to learn how to fill your inner energy reservoir so that you can begin to work with the areas within you that hold trauma. The way you would sit a hurt child in your lap or hold a kitten or a puppy, with compassion, with care, and with love. Yeah, we'll be talking about all of those a little bit more in this 7-week course. Yeah, actually a lot more.
So this one from Suzanne over on Facebook, she's asking about how overthinking impacts the wisdom areas and our ability to hear the wisdom. How will this course help quiet the mind so that we can better tune in?
So overthinking is a classic cultural issue in our world, where we have said that how we think and what you think and your education level and how many words you can spit out and how quickly you can do it, and all of those things are worshipped in our culture. So we do have a tendency as a culture to overthink and to not trust the gut, the heart, the pelvis, the feet and legs, our bones. So one of the things I do is I help people to notice when they are starting to get the limiting beliefs or the overthinking voice coming in, like that hamster in the wheel in their brain. Chug, 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 chug. One of the things I talk about in Reclaiming Your Body, I start off with the 5 myths, body myths, that keeps your overthinking brain in control and keeps you from really being able to drop in and listen to what's going on. And that's a great chapter in that book, because it really addresses so much of what stops us from accessing our own body wisdom.
So we have this one. How specifically, or what can you share about healing trauma in the pelvis that may have come from a surgery or criticism from partners or other life experience?
You know, healing the pelvis is no different than healing the gut or healing your heart or healing trauma held in your bones or your knees. Same technique, the same principles apply. You have to be aware of what's going on. You have to be willing to face it. You have to have an energy reservoir that's full enough, and you're grounded enough and resourced enough to be able to meet that area with love and compassion, true love and compassion, so that places that are encapsulated and locked away start to open, start to unravel, and unravel in a good way, like meaning something that's been holding on tight in your gut for a decade suddenly lets go and lets down, so that you can breathe back into that area of your body again and access the wisdom that's there.
So Lois asks, if the bones have been somewhat decimated by cancer treatment, can they be strengthened by following your processes?
You know, I don't know. It really does depend on you and how old you are and what kinds of things you're willing to explore. But I can tell you that if you learn how to listen to your inner landscape and you start listening deep inside, your bones will give you ideas about what direction you could go in order to strengthen whatever you got left in there. And that's really one of the pivotal pieces. This I have seen again and again and again. And it's beautiful because Dr. Upledger used to say, don't ever, the only thing that limits you is when you believe something can't happen. If you're open to the possibility that something can change and heal, there's a very good chance that it can. And it's just a question of how long it's going to take, what kind of work it's going to take, and whether or not you're willing to do it. Yeah.
That's wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you so much for your wonderful answers. This one from Sheena. How are these areas connected to the nervous system?
The nervous system is a part of everything. Remember, every cell in the body is meant to be connected with and communicating with every other cell in your system. Every other cell. So the nervous system and the way that it regulates how we feel, and the fact that I can move my hand like this and that it feels okay, and that didn't feel quite so good. You know, that's my nervous system responding with the parts of the brain that have to do with moving my muscles and moving an arm or a hand. So the nervous system is a part of the whole. And the nervous system per se is a vital part of our healing process, but it's not the only part. Not the only part.
Suzanne, can you speak to the level of the training in this course and whether people need to have any previous training, and also to people that may have taken your trainings in the past and how their experience in this course might be different?
Yeah. So I designed this class for the average person. I really wanted anyone could walk in off the street. If they want to learn this material, they can. And so the language I use, the way that I work with the processes are going to be accessible by everyone to the best of my ability to do that. You know, I am a healthcare provider. I do teach healthcare practitioners of all different licenses to do craniosacral therapy, but I'm also known for breaking things down to the simple how-to steps. And that's what I'm about to unfold here. And as I said just a few minutes ago, the why now answer. If you've already taken the 6 Wisdom Areas workshop with me 2 or 3 years ago, great. You're going to be slightly ahead of the game because it won't be brand new material. But we're going to dive much deeper here. And you'll be able to dive much deeper here than you did in that class into how to use each of these wisdom areas in today's challenges and overwhelm and anxiety. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Suzanne. So we're just coming to the end of our session today. I just want to know for you what you're most looking forward to sharing at this time in your life, and maybe your most recent learnings personally in the work that you're bringing forward.
You know, and one of the things that's most important for me to convey to people is how their sense of awareness and the flow of energy through us as human beings, and the way that that energy field flows and connects with other people, is what I see as something that will save us as a species. When we can self-reference, see, if I know how to listen to my gut and my heart, if I know how to stand my ground when it's important, if I know when I'm really in a turmoil, how to rest back in my bones and get clear and steady, if I can take all of this and my deep inspiration in my heart and the power in my pelvis and connect it with my prefrontal cortex, it enables us as a species to move to the next level. We will not be a species that can be pushed around by autocrats or by anyone outside of ourselves who's trying to do something that's out of integrity. Because when we're deeply embodied, there is an innate integrity that cannot be pushed aside. And we need that in today's world. We desperately need it. And that's really one of the pivotal pieces that I hope that I'm going to be able to teach each one of you in this next 7-week class.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us and for sending in and posting some wonderful questions for Suzanne today. Somatic Body Wisdom to address anxiety, overwhelm, and reactivated trauma begins Wednesday, July the 8th. Please visit bodywisdomareas.com to learn more and to register. And remember, if you do so by midnight Pacific, July the 2nd, you'll receive that really special bonus that Suzanne created, which is a video of her reading the first chapter of Reclaiming Your Body, Healing from Trauma and Awakening Your Body's Wisdom. That comes with a PDF as well. So it's really a wonderful bonus. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Suzanne, for your final words for our listeners. Anything on your heart today that you would like to share before we close?
Do you know, thank you, Anne. Thank you. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to share this material with everyone. I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful to the Shift Network for putting this together so that we can do it. It is deeply needed. And my prayer is that everyone who belongs in this circle that we'll be creating over these 7 weeks will hear the call and show up. And I'm really looking forward and excited about the material we're going to cover in this class. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm excited too. It's going to be wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And on behalf of all of us here at the Shift Network, we wish you well, and we look forward to having you with us on this course or on one in the future. Be well.